On April 12, 1861, when our country was still young, the long Civil War began. Everyone thought it would be a short war, the North and South both thinking they would win. But it turned into 4 long years, with many lives lost and destruction of the land. We are now honoring the 150th sesquicentennial year of that horrific war. One of the main projects of the Sesquicentennial Committee was to extend the markers of the Civil War trails. Markers are made up of less known, but no less important actions that took place in the area. Mason's Hill Civil War Trail marker not only tells about the observation spyglass used on that hill, but also includes JEB Stuart on Munson's Hill, Quaker guns, and the Grand Review at Bailey's Crossroads. We are so excited to be part of the Civil War Trail program, and now we are on the map of Fairfax County in the great state of Virginia on their Civil War Trail markers. Here comes the truck with our marker ready to be installed.
I'm Patrick Lennon. I'm the co-chair of the Fairfax County Civil War 150th Anniversary Committee. What you see going on behind me is an installation of a Civil War Trails marker that is part of the county's legacy project for the 150th anniversary. These markers just give people one more reason to come visit the historic sites throughout Fairfax County. And by fall, we'll have 10 of these installed, and they will be placed in each and every supervisory district in Fairfax County, just to illustrate to residents and visitors that no matter where you go in the county, Civil War history is always nearby. So with the support of the Board of Supervisors and the Fairfax County Park Authority and the authors of these markers, we're very fortunate to be able to tell the story of our Civil War heritage for future generations to enjoy.
I'm Mitch Bowman, Director of the Civil War Trails Program, and we're delighted to be back in Fairfax County, Virginia this morning. We've already installed one interpretive marker at the former site of the Ravensworth Plantation Home. Now we're at Mason District Park, and absolutely delightful to work with Visit Fairfax and all of the community leaders and citizens throughout Fairfax County. Our program has had several Civil War Trail sites in Fairfax for more than 15 years, sites such as the Ox Hill Battlefield. But people often ask me about the program, and if we interpret locations and talk about stories and locations and sites and personalities other than the battlefields, and we certainly do. This would be a prime example of that here at Mason District Park, where JEB Stuart and many of his cavalry members camped for several weeks in 1861 following the First Battle of Manassas. The marker talks a little bit about the camp life and about what that meant to President Abraham Lincoln to actually be able to look up on Munson's Hill and see a Confederate flag flying. How disturbing that must have been for the President of the United States. At Ravensworth, we just installed the marker there, and it tells the story of Robert E. Lee's wife when Robert E. Lee assumed command in Richmond. He obviously left Arlington House, and his wife lived for a short period of time there at Ravensworth. So absolutely delighted to be back here. CivilWarTrails.org is our website. You simply click on which state you'd like to visit, and then our Northern Virginia section will include all of these 8 new sites in Fairfax County, and we'll have those all up, linked to Google Maps, and a little bit of the history on the website within the next few days.
Hi, I'm Liz Crowell, and I'm the Cultural Resource Management and Protection Branch Manager for the Fairfax County Park Authority and co-chair of the Fairfax County Civil War Sesquicentennial Committee, and we're very pleased to have the installation of the Masons Hill marker at Mason District Park today. This culminates the effort to install signs in each of the supervisory districts, and we're delighted to be able to illustrate the history of this rich area.
Anissa Checkett, Gabby Megalis, Kate Chessman, and Nicholas. And now will lead us in the pledge.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And we have our wonderful supervisor coming up, Penny Gross.
Welcome to Mason District Park. This is a jewel in our necklace of parks in Mason District and in Fairfax County. It's a special favorite of mine. I'm the last original founder of the Friends of Mason District Park, which we founded in 1980, and so I am really very, very pleased every time we have something in this park, whether I were the supervisor or not, because of my long association with Mason District Park. Today we're here to unveil an exciting new addition to the park, and that is our Civil War Trails marker. Fairfax County didn't have as large a role in the Civil War as some of the states to our south and even to our north, but we did have enough Civil War activity to merit a place in the history books. Most of our Civil War activities, however, were done by about 1862, and as the war went other places, but we still treasure those historic places and try to preserve them, and the History Commission has been a great help, along with a number of our volunteer organizations who treasure also the preservation of history in Fairfax County. And so you have a rather extensive program before us today, and we're going to do some reminiscing, and we have some wonderful reenactors who are also participating, and it's always a pleasure to welcome them to Mason District, because it gives an extra richness to the texture of what we are doing. Next speaker is also an appointee of mine, representing Mason District on the Fairfax County Park Authority Board. Frank Veda has been a Park Authority member for well over a decade, and just works tirelessly to address park issues and to meet with constituents and to improve our parks. And it's an all volunteer position, so we need to give Frank a special thank you. Frank?
Thank you. My name is Frank Veda, and I have the honor of representing Mason District on the Park Board. Now, the Park Authority is well known for its park system and athletic fields and rec centers. But our charge and mission also call for the protection of our cultural, historic, and natural resources as well. To that end, I am pleased that our staff, under the direction of Dr. Elizabeth Crowell, in cooperation with Supervisor Gross, Ms. Naomi Zevin, and the History Commission, they've had a chance to contribute to this project. This is a valuable story to tell. This is the sesquicentennial of the Civil War, and we must remember that Fairfax County was forever changed by that national conflict. JEB Stuart used Mason Hill as the outpost in the national conflict in 1861, and the Signal Corps established a station under the command of Captain Edward Porter Alexander in order to observe the capital. Throughout Virginia and the South, small places such as this played large and significant roles in the outcome of this heroic conflict. Remembering these locations and the people who fought the war upon them is an appropriate thing to do. Sam Watkins, a soldier of the 1st Tennessee, said of the conflict's end, "America has no north, no south, no east, no west. The sun rises over the hills and sets over the mountains. The compass just points up and down. And we can now laugh at the absurd notion of being a north and a south. We are one and undivided."
Thank you, Frank. And I want to thank all of you for coming today. And I'm so excited to see so many young people here, because history is for the young, so they know where we're going. Because if you know your past, you know your future. We have 2 booklets here for you, and please pick them up at the table if you haven't had them already. It's on the historical markers of Mason District and the historic sites. And Matt Fliss, who couldn't be here today from Revitalization, worked with Penny and Matt and myself, and we made up these booklets, and they're in all the schools. So they're quite precious, so please enjoy them. This is a really fabulous day, because it's been a dream of Mason District, who is so historic, to have a marker that is national. We have lots of markers. In fact, Jack Hiller says we have more historic markers in Mason District than any other district. But we were not on the historic trail. When you're on the historic trail, you're in a book that goes throughout the United States. So we are known now. First of all, I want to say, are those the best behaved horses I've ever seen? That's Jimmy Fleming Mosby, who goes around the country as John Mosby, and his friend Sandy on their horses. So let's have a hand for them before we start. This is Sam Bailey, a descendant of Hecaliah Bailey.
I want to really thank Naomi. She kind of searched me out years ago, and I now have in order the original book written about the Bailey's Crossroad, the 2nd edition, which was updated, and your version, which is the corrected history. So I have that all in. There was a book written about the crossroads, and there was some information in there that was not true. Hecaliah Bailey was my 5th great-grandfather, who purchased the property originally in the late 1830s, 37 I believe, and then his son Lewis took it over, and this is a reading or some memoirs that Lewis jotted down. When I first came here in 1840, I went to the farm at the crossroads and have resided there ever since. Did not leave the place during the war, not a night, nor did any of my members of my family. I made myself a little more election to elect Bell and Everett than I had ever done for many years, or probably perhaps in my whole life. He did not vote for the ordinance of secession, was always in the Union lines except for 10 days. Several Union officers made their headquarters at my house, General Stoble. They were there for 6 to 2 months at a time. I never owned any slaves, and for 12 years previous to the war, I would not employ a colored man to do a day's work for me. My wife had colored women in the house, and she had 2 children bound out to her, but after the war commenced, they were freed. I had 320 acres, 5 miles from the end of the Long Bridge. About 150 acres were in woods. I bought it in 1840 and paid $6,000 in cash for it. I have to be honest, I've read 3 different articles about the gathering, and it seems to range anywhere from the number of 55,000 to 62,500 people. So maybe if we hit it about halfway, there was about 60,000 people here. And that's when McClellan staged the military review. There was an article about it in the paper, This is a particular interesting picture. The one at the top is another article, but at the bottom, this one happens to be in color. Someone took the time for our family to do this in color. So as far as I know, it's a one of a kind. But something I'm sure when we do that dedication, there'll be an interesting picture to look at, and I think it puts it with the color instead of the black and white, kind of puts a little more ambiance to quite a gathering of troops to get that many people together back then.
Now we're going to go into the Munson family. And we're going to have a lovely Julie Munson speak, and she's going to tell you on the relationship with Lincoln, President Lincoln, and her great-great-great-great-grandfather.
Timothy Bishop Munson removed from New York State to Virginia in 1851 and purchased a farm of 260 acres, which included Munson's Hill, near Falls Church, Fairfax County. Now Miles Cleveland goes on to describe Munson Hill under the rebel occupation. Munson's Hill, so named from the owner, it obtained some celebrity during the War of the Rebellion from the fact that it was the nearest point to Washington occupied by rebels after the Bull Run disaster. It is conical in shape, elevated 100 feet above surrounding country, and situated 6 miles in a direct line from Washington. From the summit, which contains about 1 acre of tableland, there is a good view of the Capitol, Washington Monument, several miles of the Potomac River, and in the west on a clear day, the Blue Ridge can be seen distinctly. The fort constructed by the rebels was simply earthworks thrown up, nearly square and enclosing about half an acre. It is armed with Quaker guns. They remained in possession about 6 weeks. In October 1861, McClellan's grand review of 75,000 soldiers in line took place in the plain at the foot of the hill. In the spring of 1861, he was twice sent for by President Lincoln and General Winfield Scott for consultation. Lucy Eleanor, 20, will be married in 1868 to Dr. A.A.E. Taylor, a Presbyterian pastor in Georgetown, D.C. But in 1861, she's seeking employment at the White House, and A.A.E. Taylor, the man who will be her husband, recounts how Lucy came into the possession of the letter from President Lincoln. So A.A.E. Taylor now writes, "Thereby hangs the tale. The persons here mentioned from Munson's Hill, Virginia, received its name because they owned it and lived there, had been forced to abandon home and all their belongings because of the advance of Lee's army after the first Bull Run affair. The young lady of the family, still in her teens, desiring to obtain work, writing in one of the departments for financial relief, called on Mrs. Lincoln and presented her case. She was received with warm and cordial sympathy, and not wishing to meet the president in the rough crowd of massive applicants for place, Mrs. Lincoln promised to arrange for a private interview with Mr. Lincoln in the early morning of the next day. At that time, attended by her brother, she, being Lucy, was ushered into one of the large private rooms upstairs, where in Western fashion, a great wood fire blazed in a wide open fireplace. The president, after cordial greeting, seated them before the fire, stretching out his long limbs towards the warmth. Folding his hands across his breast, he listened patiently to the young lady's story, asking many questions and showing the most friendly sympathy throughout. When the suffering of some of the fugitives from home and the destruction of property were described, in reply to his kindly cross-examination, which was cross only in a legal sense, he uttered a heavy sigh, and letting his countenance fall into the deepest sadness, slowly uttered these words: "I suppose history will set me down as a man very prone to war, when in fact nothing is more foreign to my nature. I hate the whole thing." The manner that the words were so impressive that both his auditors wrote the sentence down soon after leaving his presence. Referring now to the work of women as clerks or copyists, the typewriter was not as yet, Mr. Lincoln said to Lucy, "You don't want to be one of those strong-minded women. When I was in Springfield, one of these women lecturers came around, and under the announcement of her lecture, some wag wrote, 'A hen will crow tonight.' You don't want to be one of the hen-crowing kind." The young lady will never forget that interview in the early gray of a wintry morning, nor the sad and heavy-hearted president giving his unaffected and affecting sympathy to those in distress. It was then that Mr. Lincoln wrote for her the note which Secretary Chase kindly permitted her to retain at her request. So now I'm quoting the letter. Executive Mansion, December 13th, 1861, Honorary Secretary of Treasury, my dear sir, I am very anxious that some employment shall be found for the young lady, bearer of this. Please see her and her brother, who are driven out from Munson's Hill. Yours truly, A. Lincoln. It's interesting to note she did not secure the position, but the writer, A.E. Taylor, eventually secured the lady, and with her the autograph letter. And these details are now set down from her own lips.
Now we're going to have another Munson, Mary Root, but she's the middle Munson, Mary Root Munson.
These words are also from the diary of Miles Cleveland Munson, and I am his great-great-granddaughter. Under the date of August 15th, 1861, he writes, my brother, Daniel O'Connell Munson, had a narrow escape today. 2 companies of Union soldiers were encamped on Munson Hill near the dwelling house. Daniel was called to Alexandria on business and made the journey on horseback. During his absence, the rebels made an attack in considerable force, and 2 companies were dispersed, a number being killed and wounded and taken prisoners. As Daniel returned just after sunset, unaware of the change of occupants, his attention was directed to a company of soldiers about 20 rods distant, stretched across the road in front of the dwelling house, who looked very unlike those he had left in possession of this morning. 2 or 3 shots were fired over his head, apparently. He waved a white handkerchief to indicate his peaceful character, but his horse became restive and started to go in the opposite direction. Then a whole volley was fired and the horse dropped dead without a struggle. While in the act of extricating himself from the body of the fallen animal, one ball struck the ground by his foot, covering it with sand. He ran a distance of 15 or 20 rods, the balls whistling about his ears, when he concealed himself behind a clump of bushes. A neighbor who saw the horse next day informed him that there were 14 balls in its body. 2 balls had passed through my brother's hat, his coat was riddled with bullets, and yet he did not receive a scratch. After dark, he made his way to Bailey's Crossroads, our dear neighbors, was taken prisoner by the Union picket guard there and sent to Alexandria and released the next day. That was August 15th, 1861. This next one is September 25th, 1863, when Mosby raided Munson Hill. Here, Miles Cleveland Munson wrote, Daniel had several narrow escapes from guerrillas. He often secreted himself in the nursery and in other hiding places. A party of guerrillas, about 40 in number, under the cover of darkness and by unfrequented paths, made their way through the Union lines and surrounded my father's house about midnight, after the family had retired to rest. Their purpose was to capture my father. This would be to capture Timothy. My sister, now Mrs. Taylor, with quick woman's wit, devised a plan to throw them off the track. My brother Daniel had been sick in bed for a week and under the doctor's care. My father was in bed in a room adjoining the parlor where the guerrillas were assembled. The door of his room was partly open, and for some uncountable reason that room was overlooked in the hasty search. The guerrilla chief said to my sister that he desired to see Mr. Munson. She replied, he is upstairs, sick, in bed. He directed a surgeon belonging to his party to examine the sick man and report whether he could be removed or not. The doctor soon reported in the affirmative. In the meantime, some of the party who had remained outside collected all the horses of any value, 5 in number, and having assisted my brother to mount one of them, they all left the premises. When they got near Falls Church, about 2 miles distant, Mosby, who was riding by the side of my brother, remarked, Mr. Munson, I supposed you to be a much older man. My brother replied, I supposed your object was to capture my father, and you have taken me by mistake. When about 7 miles from my father's house, they ran into a strong Union picket force who received them with a volley. Mosby gave the command for each one to look out for himself. In the confusion, my brother got separated from the command and escaped. He passed the remainder of the night in the woods and then reached home by a circuitous route the next day. That's actual true story.
This Munson's not going anywhere. You're coming with me.
Not again!
Good job, good job. Glad you're happy now, Mosby. And now, last but not least, we're going to have Bonnie come up here and show you what the women wore in those days.
I am a mother, and I am dressed this way because I thought everybody was going to be dressed this way. So I don't know, maybe perhaps I need to explain why I have 7 layers of clothing on. Oh, show them. Oh, madam, that's indecent. Well, I have pantaloons, so if I get up on the carriage, I'm not indecent. So I do have my pantaloons on, and then I have my petticoat underneath it to keep me a little warm next to my body. And then I have my hoops on to make this quite hard to get into a carriage and sit down on my rump. So, and I can tell you, if it's a long ride, I'm anxious when the carriage stops. Now, I have that, and then I have 2 petticoats on top because I don't want you to see my hoops. And then I have my skirt on. And then I have my, well, this thing to keep me warm, my little shawl or my mantle. And then I have this in my chemisette on. Oh, it's so indecent. You know, I don't take baths every day like you do. I'm terribly sorry if the odors get to you, but I'm used to it. And I sponge off every day. So I hope that when you get close to me, I'll smell quite good because I did put some rose water on. Well, if anyone is interested, especially the men, if you want to come up later, I'll show you everything. Oh, dear me. What can I say? And I do have my hat on to keep the sun off of me. Now we're going to unveil the marker, and I want to thank you all.